Well, here we are again. Let's see if everybody's here. I see a lot of you are here. Good, good, good. We have a lot of important things to do today. Specifically, we need to go over the sample midterm, which is on Moodle as we speak. And so let's get this thing open and take a look at it. And you can see it does in fact cover just the first 4 chapters. We'll get to the other chapters on the second midterm. And then of course, there will also be a final exam. All right, so let's take a look. Ooh, there's a lot here. Now, the actual test won't be this long. This is meant to be a little bit of everything. It's sort of like a smorgasbord of questions. So anyway, I guess we'll just get started. And if we finish by the time the period is over, I actually have a couple more videos to watch. But right now, let's focus on this. And so we'll start by noting that an opportunity cost, this is the value of the best alternative that is sacrificed when when a resource is used. Whoops. I guess that's, we can keep it general as we can. The best alternative sacrifice resources used. For example, if you use your beef to produce hamburgers, you can't also produce steak. So, or we could just put it even more general, just, let's do it this way. Let's make it even more general than that. When a decision is made, as to how resources are allocated. That should do it. All right, as long as it's clear that you're measuring what you've given up by choosing to do one thing with a resource compared with the other options that you had available to you. All right, how about, now these next 3 are very quick and simple. The returns to capital are known as interest. So the word interest is used here in economics to refer to the returns that the capital owners will receive by renting out their capital. The returns to land are known as rent. All right, now remember too that land means more than just literal land. It means all natural resources. Okay, and so yes, it sounds a little odd to say. Imagine if you were if you're acquiring, let's say, minerals, but the word rent is being used in a very general sense here to mean the returns to the owners of land. And of course, the returns to labor, as you know, are referred to as wages, which you may already have some experience with. Wages, yes, of course. All right, now we're looking here at our discussion about trade. Absolute advantage is the ability of a country to produce goods with fewer resources than other countries. Whereas comparative advantage could be thought of as the ability of a country to produce goods at the lowest opportunity cost. That's the key to the whole thing, the lowest opportunity cost. That's how we decide. Now, of course, one of the implications of this is that a country can have an absolute advantage in 2 different goods and yet not have the comparative advantage in both of them. We saw that with a couple of our examples. The comparative advantage refers to the lowest opportunity cost, whereas absolute advantage refers to resources in general. So in other words, the United States has the absolute advantage in a lot of products, and yet we still import those products because we do not have the comparative advantage. All right, so who introduced this concept of comparative advantage? That would be David Ricardo. Very good. So far, so good. Then we have which economic philosophy advocates restrictions on trade in order to acquire gold and silver? That would be mercantilism. And in fact, this is what Adam Smith was essentially criticizing when he decided to write his book, The Wealth of Nations. He wanted to explain to the world how mercantilism was a very short-sighted, counterproductive policy, and that instead trade should be based on absolute advantage. He also made the very important point that countries do not trade with each other unless they really believe that they are benefiting from it, so that in the long run, mercantilism can't possibly work. All right, now, what is it true of the opportunity cost on a straight line production possibilities frontier? Now, we haven't seen a ton of these in our slides, but if you look at the example with England and Portugal, where one is producing wine and the other is producing cloth, if you have a production possibilities frontier that is a straight line as opposed to a curve, then the interesting thing is that this is a straight line production possibilities curve. The opportunity costs are constant, as opposed to what we've seen before with our concave production possibilities frontier, which is what we're more used to seeing. With a case like this, which is the more normal case, opportunity costs increase. Okay, so in other words, in order to make more of one good, you have to give up more and more of the other good. Whereas with the straight line case, the opportunity costs are constant. And that can happen. You know, there are cases where opportunity costs are constant. Most of the time, though, they actually increase in practice. Very good. Now, what is the difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand? All right. Now, it doesn't say that you must draw a picture, but I want to draw a picture just to remind you what this actually looks like. Oh, actually, let me draw two diagrams side by side, just so you can see it more clearly. All right, so in the first case, we have 2 points on the same demand curve. So if we move up or down this demand curve, this is known as a change in quantity demanded. And then we have, in this second case, the entire demand curve shifts, and it could go either way. Actually, let's call this D1 and D2. And D3, we have to allow for both possibilities. This, of course, is an increase in demand. And the one on the left, this is a decrease in demand. And both of these are collectively are referred to as changes in quantity demand. Changes in demand. All right. So this is what the pictures look like. Now, having said all that, just in terms of English, a change in quantity demanded results when the price of the good changes. Okay? A change in demand results when any factor other than the price of the good changes. Okay. So that's really what you're trying to keep in mind. When the price changes, we have a change in quantity demanded because we're only moving up and down the same demand curve. When something else changes, and that could mean literally anything else, there's a change in demand. And that, of course, can happen in two different ways. We can shift to the right or to the left. Beautiful. All right. Now, if consumer tastes for a good increase, what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity? Now, if you're not sure, what you should do is draw a picture. And you might recall from the slides that if the tastes increase, then people want to buy more of the product. So imagine that, let's say this is the market for avocados. This is a product where people suddenly discovered how delicious and healthy they are. And so over the last 20 or 30 years, the demand for avocados has gone up. Okay, they're everywhere. So people wanted to buy more avocados. And so the result of that, if you look at the graph, is that the price has gone up. Actually, let me fix one little thing here. Okay, there we go. And you can see both the price and the quantity increased as a result of this. Okay, so even without the graph, all you have to do in this case is say, when this happens, the equilibrium price and quantity both increase. Okay, that's all you really needed. But I think it's helpful to see the graph because then you can visualize exactly what's happening and why this is true. So what you always have to ask yourself is which curve is being affected and how. All right, now this next one involves substitutes in production. So this is one of those cases where I think your best bet is to think of an example. Okay, for example, suppose that a farmer can grow corn or wheat on his land with the same resources. Then the corn and wheat are considered to be substitutes in production in the sense that you can replace one with the other. All right. If corn suddenly becomes more expensive, you might want to grow less wheat so that you can grow more corn. So therefore, we have to think about it in those terms. So therefore, suppose that X is the wheat. And if the price of corn increases, which is what the question is telling us, okay, X is the wheat, and the corn becomes more expensive, and corn, of course, is a substitute in production, then the farmer will grow less wheat. Therefore, the supply curve will shift to the left. Now, the question is, okay, now in this case, they didn't ask about the price and the quantity. They just wanted to know what happens to the supply. In other words, the supply of the good, meaning the wheat, will decrease. All right, so we're going to show that on a graph, not because we have to, but because it might be a good idea to visualize what's happening here. So therefore, the supply of the wheat will decrease when there's an increase in the price of a substitute in production. And you'll recall that an increase in anything represents or is represented by a shift to the right. And if you were asked in the problem what happened to the price and quantity, you would have an easy time of it because you can see it right on this graph. Okay, so just remember, this is the market for wheat. And the supply of wheat shifts to the right. Supply increases, Um, oh no, I just realized I went through all that trouble and I drew it the wrong way. It shifts to the left. Sorry, let me fix that. My fault. I wasn't paying attention. I just realized I screwed it up. Let's try that again. Whoops. Yes, that's right. The supply is shifting to the left because this is the wheat, not the corn. This is the wheat. Okay, so here's supply curve 1. Here's supply curve 2. And this is, in fact, the market for wheat. Oh my God, what happened here? My graph is gone. I've never seen that before. The whole damn thing just disappeared. Huh. Well, that's pretty annoying. All right, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to draw this one all over again. That's for sure. Wow, that's really annoying. All right, so I just wanted to quickly show what happens when there's an increase in the demand. Okay, so this is an increase in demand. And so you can see the equilibrium price and quantity both increase. And I'll just add this last bit because the demand for the good increases. Okay, so in other words, I've shifted the demand curve to the right. And you can plainly see that at the new intersection point with the supply curve, the price has gone up and so has the quantity. All right. Yeah, luckily, I don't know what that was. It just disappeared. Well, anyway, but here, as I started to fix it, the supply curve here with the corn shifts to the left. Let me fix that one more time. Here we go. So let's try that one more time. So we're going to assume that this is the market for wheat. Okay. And here's this initial supply. Actually, let's make this the new supply. This will be the initial supply. So we started out here, and this is our price and quantity at 0.1. And then all of a sudden, something's happened to reduce the supply of the wheat. And that something was that the price of corn increases. Okay, so as a result of the price of corn increasing, the supply of wheat decreases. Okay, so the bottom line, I mean, the question itself just said, what happens to the supply of good X? So the answer is it decreases. I mean, that's it. That's really all you need to know. But we want to understand it. All right, we want to really understand why this is happening. So again, this is our example. Corn and wheat, there are clearly substitutes in production. So for good X, which is the wheat, a change in the price of corn will affect the supply. In this case, the corn became more expensive. It becomes more profitable to grow the wheat and therefore, the corn, and therefore we switch our supply from wheat to corn. All right, and not only that, but it didn't erase my graph. Nice. Jesus, I had no idea that could happen. It's pretty frustrating. Okay. All right, now under what conditions will the equilibrium price and quantity both rise? Okay, well, here's one way you can think about this. This is meant to be a helpful hint. I just want to remind you, and I mentioned this once before, when the demand curve shifts the price and quantity, or the equilibrium price and quantity, both increase or they both decrease. Okay, when the supply curve shifts, the equilibrium price and quantity move in opposite directions. And you can confirm this to yourself by drawing the pictures. Therefore, in this case, it must be true that this is caused by a change in the demand curve. All right, so when the equilibrium price and quantity both increase, this must be caused by a change in the demand curve, or a shift, or I should say a change in demand, or in other words, a shift of the demand curve. The question is which way? And if you're not sure, again, try to draw the picture. So let's see what could cause both of those to go up. All right, let's just start by letting this demand curve go up and let's see what happens. Oh, I think we're on the right track right now. Oh yes, it looks good. So the price went up and the quantity went up. So therefore, the correct answer to this question is, the question was, under what conditions will the equilibrium price and quantity increase? And the answer is when the demand curve shifts to the right. All right, that's really all you need to know. Now, with this one, it says, under what conditions will the equilibrium price of a good rise while the equilibrium quantity falls? Well, based on what I said up here, when the supply curve shifts, the equilibrium price and quantity move in opposite directions. Therefore, this must be caused by a change in supply. Again, that means a shift in the supply curve. The question is which way? Did it shift to the right or to the left? All right, well, let's try a graph. Let's try this one. Suppose we decide, oh, here we go. No, a shortage of a good is different because this implies that the price went up and the quantity went down. Okay, a shortage means that, well, all right, I think I see what you're saying. A shortage means we're down here somewhere. See, the problem though with that is that it's kind of an ambiguous case because here you can see that while the price rises as a result, the quantity demanded is actually dropping and the quantity supplied is actually rising. So that's why this is not really the best answer, because here what they're saying is that unambiguously the quantity is going down. So that's why I would not choose that as an answer. What I would do instead is choose a shift in the supply curve. But it's a good thought. But I would say that the best answer is the fact that the supply curve must have shifted to the left, because this will definitely do the job. You could go from here, for example, to here. And here's point 1, here's point 2, Q1, Q2, P1, P2. All right, and you can see that what we were looking for was that the price went up and the quantity went down. So according to this graph, under what conditions we would say the supply curve shifts to the left. Or you could also say the supply decreases. Okay, either way, you'll have the right answer. It means the same thing. All right. Nice. All right, let's see now. 15, what effects does the price ceiling have on the market for a good? Okay, so in other words, what is going on here? And by the way, it's understood when you say price ceiling, it's the ceiling has to be set below the equilibrium price in order to be effective. So we're assuming that that's what's happening here. Okay, in other words, imagine if the government said, you know what, from now on, nobody's allowed to charge more than $1 million a month for rent. Well, that's not going to have much of an effect because, unless you're in, Park Avenue, let's say, you're not likely to be paying $1 million a month for rent. Okay, but so here's your price ceiling. And this is a government interference in the marketplace. Here's your equilibrium. And here's the price ceiling. I drew it as a solid line to indicate that it is rigid. And so the key detail here is that down here at this low price, the quantity demanded, this is the quantity supplied, of course. At the price ceiling, the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, which implies a shortage. Not just a shortage, but a permanent shortage. Okay, so in other words, you could write either shortage or permanent shortage. Permanent in the sense that it cannot correct itself. Unlike in the free market, where this problem wouldn't last for very long. If there was a shortage of housing, the landlords would raise the price or they would raise the rent. And in addition to that, they might also build new buildings in the long run. But here that can't happen. So we have a shortage that cannot correct itself. The price floor is exactly the opposite. All right, the price is too high. People don't want to buy as much of this good as is available at such a high price. So let's say this is our equilibrium. And unfortunately, what did I do? This is the price floor. And therefore we have, this is our quantity supplied, this is our quantity demanded. Let's put that over here. All right, and this horizontal distance is our permanent shortage. All right, and again, it's permanent because it's not possible with the price system to correct it. So the correct answer is shortage, although you can put permanent shortage. Oh, did I write the wrong? Oh, you're right. Thank you. I wrote the wrong thing on the graph. Sorry. It is. Yes, it is. It is, in fact, price floor. Thank you. Oh, Jesus. Got to watch it in case it erases my whole graph. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Oh, absolutely. It's definitely optional. No, I definitely, unless it specifically says that you must draw a graph, it is absolutely not necessary. Okay, it might help you, but unless it says draw a graph, then it's not necessary. But I like to draw graphs, as you can tell. Okay. All right. And also, let's face it, it can help you visualize what you're doing without trying to have to memorize a bunch of details, which is basically a recipe for forgetting. All right. I mean, you can try, but I think you'll find it's easier if you either look at the pictures or try to understand the logic. All right. What else do we have? Oh man, there's more. Oh, I did it. God, this is not my day. You're right. I wrote that one wrong too. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's a surplus. What is my problem? Sorry about that. I need more coffee. Sorry. Yes, I completely screwed it up. This is a surplus. And if you can't remember, I'm trying to think of an example. This is what we mean by, let's say, the minimum wage. There's too much labor available and people aren't buying it. So the price floor causes a surplus. Thank you. And let's fix that. And then, of course, this price ceiling results in a shortage. All right, let me straighten that out a little. There we go. Okay, that should do it. Now there's plenty of room, and now everything's fine. Okay, thank you, everyone. Now, an inferior good, very simply, this is a good for which the demand falls when incomes rise. Okay. And so again, you don't need an example, but I'm going to put one in here anyway. Our old friend 87 grade gasoline. Generic drugs. Generic products in this supermarket products like canned vegetables, things like that. And again, if it asks for examples, that's fine. If it doesn't, you don't have to bother. Just say it's a good for which the demand falls when incomes rise. We buy less of it when our incomes rise. Now, and also another thing too here is that when you're writing answers in English, there's a fair amount of leeway that I can give you when you try to explain yourself. Not so much with equations. You really have to do everything correctly. But here, there's a lot of ways you can explain what an inferior good is. You could also say, for example, this is something that people only buy because they can't afford something better. We did discuss it that way. All right, now here we go. Who introduced the concept of absolute advantage? That would be our old friend, Adam Smith. All right, the father of economics, as he's often called. When Adam Smith was writing, there was no such thing as the discipline of economics. In fact, he himself never used that word. He referred to himself as what he called a moral philosopher. That was apparently I don't know what discipline that was supposed to be, but he called himself a moral philosopher. It was only later on that we started using the word economist to describe him and the others. Okay. Now, what is true of the points inside of a production possibilities frontier? All right, let's just quickly review this. So just a quick overview. This is good X. This is good Y. And the points on the curve equal maximum efficiency. In other words, it is not possible to squeeze out any more output with the resources that we have inside, like, let's say this is D, E, F, points inside the curve represent wasteful production. And there's a lot of ways we can explain that. Or wasteful or inefficient production. So if you're inside the curve, that means you're wasting resources. It's really that simple. You do not want that. Okay, you're a profit maximizing business or profit making company. A lot of your activities are geared towards minimizing your costs. Okay, because you don't really have any control over what the customers buy. but you do control how much it costs you to produce the product. So therefore, your focus is going to be on keeping those costs to a minimum to maximize our profits. Now, outside the curve, then, if these points are actually points of maximum efficiency, well, then what else is there? There's efficient and there's inefficient. Okay, here's A, here's B, here's C. Let's call this point X. Okay, you could use the word ideal, but what sometimes we call it unattainable, in the sense that it is impossible to produce this output. Although, yes, ideal is absolutely correct. It is impossible to produce outside the curve with current resources. Okay. In other words, it would be like, imagine if you go to Starbucks and they say, we can make 800 coffees an hour. No, you can't. It's too small for that. So what they do instead is they try to figure out the right combinations of, let's say, coffee and espresso that they can make to maximize their profits. There's just certain things they can't do. There's a limit to how much resources they have, how much space, how much time, how many employees, that kind of thing. Beautiful. Now it's time for the problems. All right, so these were the short fill-ins. All right, and these could be anything from the first 4 chapters. And for the most part, you could typically answer these with like a few words or a sentence, even though I went ahead and sort of expanded on them. In most cases, really all you need is maybe a sentence or 2. So you don't have to feel like you must go berserk and write a bunch of stuff that isn't necessary. But if it helps you, then go ahead and feel free to draw curves or graphs, and also provide examples if you feel the need. That's fine. Now here, once again, we have our production possibilities frontier, and it's hamburgers and steaks. But this time, it's not exactly the same as the last one we just did, I guess, the other day, because the numbers are slightly different, but the principle is the same. And I'm sure that we could use some practice. So let's do this. We've got hamburger on the vertical axis and steak on the horizontal axis. All right. Now, it does say that we should draw it. So we have to draw it. And we'll do the best we can. But remember, we're not artists. And this is the kind of thing that you normally don't draw by hand. In fact, why don't we do this? Why don't we cheat a little and draw the correct shape first, and then we'll do the points afterward. How about that? So this is 20 hamburgers. This is point A. All right. Let's see. I want to make this as nice as possible. B would be, okay, that's A. B would be, let's say here. C would be, okay, D, right about here, I suppose. And you can see it's not perfect, not even close. And then E means you just have all steaks. This is E. All right, well, it's not the best, but it's not the worst either. So we're going to find ourselves needing to calculate opportunity costs moving in both directions. Okay, so in the first case, we're going to do our opportunity costs for hamburger. Okay, so in general, for part B, any opportunity cost you might encounter is calculated in the following way. The opportunity cost of hamburger equals sacrificed steak over gained hamburger. So that implies we are moving from point E to A. How do you know that? Because if you're moving up the curve, you're making less and less steak and more hamburger. All right, so that's an important detail. In order to calculate the opportunity cost of hamburger, we must be moving in a direction where we're making more and more hamburger. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So what are the opportunity costs? All right, I'll tell you what. Let's label this first one D to E, or E to D rather. And if you look at that graph, you can see that the opportunity cost, the sacrifice of steak is from 12 to 9. The gain of hamburger is from 0 to 8. In other words, in order to get 8 more hamburgers, we had to give up 3 steaks. Okay, now you can also, of course, read it straight off the chart. Actually, that might be your best bet. So I'll write this as E to D to indicate that we're starting at E and moving our way up to D. Here we can go from D to C. So now what happens when we go from D to C? We give up 3 more steaks. We go from 9 to 6. The gain in the hamburgers is 6. Okay, we go from 8 to 14. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could write down the calculations too, but I think it's enough to show that you're gaining or losing, 3 steaks, and you're picking up 6 hamburgers. And of course, as you would expect, as we keep doing this, we're going to incur increasing opportunity costs because it is a curve. So then we go from C to B. We lost 3 more steaks. This time we only gained 4 hamburgers. And then finally, as we move from B to A, we once again sacrificed 3 steaks. This time we only gained 2 burgers. So this is our chart. And so as we move up the curve and try to make progressively more burgers, the opportunity cost of the steaks is going up. Okay, if it doesn't work this way, that means you've made a mistake somewhere. All right, now we have to do the opposite. We're going to determine the opportunity cost of steak. And of course, just like with any other opportunity cost situation, the opportunity cost of steak equals the sacrificed hamburger divided by the gained steak. And now we are moving this time from A down to D, E rather. Okay, in other words, in order to incur an opportunity cost of steak, that implies that we're making more steaks and less hamburgers. So we're going from A down to E this time. That's an important detail. If you get that backwards, you're going to get the wrong results. So as we go from A to B, the opportunity cost equals, all right, let's look at the chart. We lost 2 burgers. We picked up 3 steaks. Okay. From B to C, the opportunity cost. And so from B to C, we gave up 4 burgers from 18 to 14, and we picked up 3 steaks. So we have 1.333 hamburgers per steak. From C to D, we gained, we had to give up 6 burgers to get 3 steaks here. And then finally from D to E, the opportunity cost is 8 over 3, which is 2.67. And as you can see, as we keep increasing our output of steaks, the opportunity cost of the hamburgers is going up. So because of that, that means it's pretty clear that we're doing something right here. All right, if these are going in the right direction, if the opportunity costs are increasing, then we must have done something right. Okay. Well, now let's see what these other ones are all about. What is the impact on the equilibrium price and quantity of a good for each of the following? All right, so if you notice, they're giving us factors. They're not giving us changes in the supply or the demand. We have to figure that out for ourselves. And then, although it's optional, we can still draw graphs to help us figure this out. So what about the taste? Now, we saw that earlier. This one is really straightforward. Obviously, if people want more of a good, the demand has gone up. All right. So we'll have these 2 points, both of which represent equilibrium. So you can see that price rises, price falls. No, I just drew it wrong, sorry. Let me get that arrow back. Everything's right except this arrow. Okay, here we go. That's better. So the demand curve shifted to the right because people want more of this good. Let's say this is organic food. Organic is all the rage now. It didn't used to be. It wasn't that long ago that nobody ever heard of it. But organic foods have suddenly become all the rage. So people are willing to pay much higher prices for, let's say, fruits and vegetables when they find out that they're organic. So here we can just simply say price and quantity increase. All right, that's all you really need. The graph is optional. But you can see it really helps, doesn't it? Complements. We haven't thought about this in a while. All right, let's just dream up an example. How about, suppose X is hamburgers. Or no, actually, let's let the X be the ketchup. Or you know what? Let's make up a new example. We always do ketchup. Let's try this one. Suppose that X is jelly. The price of peanut butter rises. Okay. Now, even if you haven't had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich since you were 8 years old, it doesn't matter. In the market as a whole, people see these as complements. Okay, so why? They just seem to go together. There's nothing to explain. They taste great together, don't they? Yes, they do. So if the price of peanut butter rises, what will happen? People will buy less peanut butter and therefore less jelly because they consume the peanut butter and jelly as a single unit. All right. So that's why this is happening. And so we don't necessarily need to draw the picture. So the bottom line is the demand for jelly decreases, and therefore the price and the quantity fall. All right. You could draw the picture if you want. It's just the opposite of the one we had up here. but it's not necessarily, oh, what the heck, let's do it. It'll only take a minute. This is the market for jelly. And as a result of the increase in the price of the peanut butter, the demand for jelly is now lower. Okay, so the price goes down from, the equilibrium goes from 1 to 2, and therefore the price and the quantity both fall. Very good. Now, how about, substitutes? All right. So for this one, the classic example is Coke and Pepsi, although obviously there can be a lot of other possibilities. Let's try a different one. Let's say that X is Starbucks coffee. And let's say the price of Dunkin' Donuts coffee increases. Now, a lot of people, coffee is a very different thing, I think. But let's just say that most people consider these to be substitutes for each other. Yeah, there's a lot of people who only would take the Starbucks or, only take the Dunkin' Donuts because the Starbucks is so strong. But let's just say that most people consider them to be substitutes. So if the price of the Dunkin' Donuts coffee increases, or McDonald's coffee too, with another classic example, people will buy less Dunkin' Donuts coffee and more Starbucks coffee. Okay, so therefore, in other words, what we're seeing here is that if X is the Starbucks, whoops, what am I doing? X is Starbucks, I'll put that over here. All right, price and quantity. The demand for the Starbucks will go up because compared to the Dunkin' Donuts, it is now relatively cheaper. And so the bottom line is that the price and quantity will increase. Okay? Because those people are buying more Starbucks and paying more for it because of the fact that the Dunkin' Donuts became more expensive. Okay. And then there's one more, a reduction in the price of input. Okay, this is about supply, okay, because it involves the cost of production. All right, so suppose that the price of tomatoes falls, then the supply of pizza should rise because it is now cheaper and therefore more profitable to produce pizza. It's just as simple as that. Okay. Okay, so you can see that because of the change or the reduction in the price of the tomatoes, let me make this clear by drawing it in here. This curve or graph represents the market for the pizzas. So not the tomatoes. Because tomatoes are cheaper, more pizza will be produced. And so the bottom line is the price will fall and the quantity will rise. Very nice. Okay, now what do we have down here? Ooh, these don't require any kind of graphs. How sad is that? What term is used to describe a situation when the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied? This is a shortage, of course. More of the good is being, people want to buy more of the product than is being made available to them. Now you could draw a picture too, of course, but it's not really needed. And then we have the quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded. This, of course, is a surplus. And oh, look at this one. What is the relationship between equilibrium quantity and, quantity supplied and demanded in equilibrium? In equilibrium, the quantity supplied of a good equals the quantity demanded. That's what equilibrium means. All right, so we could draw a picture if we needed to, but it shouldn't be necessary here. All right, what are 3 factors that can decrease the demand for normal good? All right, now as usual, there's more than one. There's more than 3 even. So what you're gonna do is just basically pick 3 of them. But you know what? I have more than that here. I'll tell you what, let me list more of them. You get to pick which ones you want. For example, an increase in the taste for the good. Oh, sorry, decrease, my fault. Yeah, a decrease in the taste for the good. Like tobacco, that's our classic example. What can cause tobacco is considered to be a normal good because people would tend to smoke more when they had more money to spend. But because of all the research and all that shows how bad smoking is, in recent years the demand has dropped, and so that's because what we would call the taste for tobacco is less than it used to be. What other possibilities are there? A decrease. Now this is a normal good, so a decrease in consumer incomes would do the trick. So how about this one? A decrease in the price of substitutes. Like if Pepsi becomes cheaper, people buy less Coke. Or at the same time, though, an increase in the price of complements. Okay, so again, if peanut butter becomes more expensive, we'll buy less jelly. The expected future price of the good falls, meaning that we expect it to go on sale, we would therefore hold off from buying it today. The number of consumers in the market for the good falls. Okay. So in other words, in a state or a country where the population is shrinking, then the demand for normal goods should fall because there's fewer people there who want to buy it. And then incomes, or actually, I guess what I should say is credit. This is actually kind of, oh, I know why, because it's expected future incomes and or credit decrease. In other words, we expect that maybe we're going to lose our jobs very soon. Maybe we better not be spending so much money. So we'll probably cut back on our demand for just about all goods, except for the things we need just to live, like food and gas. Now, how about supply? All right, now it says 3 factors that decrease the supply, but I'm just going to show you several of them. You can pick. Now, this first one is kind of, technically, you can say that technology What? Well, normally technology only advances. So in principle, if the technology, I don't even know how you would even express this. Technology, I suppose it somehow could go backwards. I mean, certainly it did during the Middle Ages, but I think we should leave this one out altogether because I think that in practice, technology normally just does one thing, and that's increase. So for decrease in the supply, what we could say is that the cost of the factors of production increases, such as land, labor, capital, that type of thing, or an increase in the price of what we call substitutes in production, or a decrease in the price of complements in production, which we saw earlier. So in other words, if corn becomes more expensive, we'll grow less wheat and vice versa. How about the price of the good is expected to increase in the future. So therefore, we want to hold back on our sales and sell this product in the future when prices are higher. The number of producers of the good decreases. In other words, somebody leaves the market, a company goes out of business that was producing a product. Therefore, there's less output. You could also, there's another one that you sometimes see listed, the weather or nature, it's called. How about this? Weather worsens. In other words, let's say it's constantly raining or there's constantly flooding and things like that. That could actually reduce certainly the supply of agricultural goods. So I think that will do for this one. Okay. So in other words, government policy could interfere, and then the technology moves backwards when we're prevented from using it. I like that. So we have an idea here for when technology might go backwards, when government says you must stop using a certain technological advancement. That, okay, you could throw that in on the test if you want to. I would accept that. But I mean, the technology itself isn't going backwards. It's just that we're being prevented from using it. But that still would lower the supply of the good. Okay, because the technology is presumably making it easier to produce that product. Technology available, yeah. So, but I mean, during the Middle Ages, after the fall of the Roman Empire, because I remember reading somewhere that the Romans had cement, but somehow that knowledge got lost during the Middle Ages and it had to be reinvented many centuries later. So, I mean, the Romans had a lot of things that were lost and had to be rediscovered in Western Europe because of the Dark Ages. So it could happen, but it's not going to happen now because technology is highly profitable and nobody's going to abandon technology that actually works. All right. Anyway, so what comes next? You'd think that would be all of it, but no, you would be wrong. There's still plenty more to go. If there's a shortage of a good, then the price will increase. It's just that simple. All right. The price will increase because people want to pay. I mean, they're willing to buy this good. They want more of it than is being made available to them. And so naturally, the price has to go up. If there's a surplus, there's too much being produced at such a high price, the price will decrease. Now here, it does actually say the words show graphically, which means now for the first time, you're expected to actually draw the graph. So the improvement in technology, of course, reduces the cost of production, and therefore the supply curve will shift to the right. Very straightforward. Yeah, we like this one. This is why we have laptops, and this is why we have cell phones and all the rest, all the fun things in our life are made possible by technology. Technology. That's right. Okay, so the supply curve shifts to the right, and as a result, the price of the good drops and the quantity goes up. We have more of the product and it's cheaper because of technology. Now, of course, the reason why this is happening is because it becomes more profitable to the producers. So it's the profits. The technology by itself isn't enough, really, when you think about it. But right, when a capitalist system like ours, that rapidly growing technology means that more output will be made available to us because it's more profitable. The number of consumers, okay, if there's more people in the market, the demand curve has to go up. There's more people. So if you're Coca-Cola, you love to see the population growing because more people means more Coke drinkers. It's that simple. Okay, so that's right. Every little baby is a potential future customer. And so that's what happens. All right, this is what we mean by an increase in the number of consumers. The demand curve shifts to the right. Okay, now, an increase in consumer tastes. All right, well, we've already seen this one. And this turns out to be an increase in demand. So we're going to buy more organic rutabagas, I guess, just because we think that they're healthier. So the demand shifts to the right. All right, so we've got higher demand. Okay, and of course the price goes up, but the quantity also goes up. We can have plenty more. We can have all the organic products we want as long as we're willing to pay for them. And of course, you've noticed that organic products typically are more expensive. Now, the complement production, this one again, we've got to be careful with this one. There's only one or two decent examples that I could think of. So example, natural gas and crude oil are complements in production. So therefore, suppose that good X is crude oil. If the price of natural gas rises, it becomes more profitable to produce more natural gas, which means that more crude oil is automatically being produced because it's part of the same process. You know, you can't have more of one without more of the other, apparently, or at least it's not that easy. So if the natural gas goes up, it's more profitable to make more natural gas, but that means we also end up with more crude oil because that's part of the exploration process. So therefore, when this happens, the supply of both goods goes up. Oops. All right, beautiful. And now we've got, now here you're not going to actually do any calculations as such. All you really have to do is look at the table. This is our classic example of comparative advantage given to us by David Ricardo in his book in the early 1800s. All that we need to notice is a couple of things. First of all, if you look at England, they only need an hour of labor to make cloth versus 3 hours for Portugal. And they also only need 3 hours to make wine versus 4 hours in Portugal. So England has the absolute advantage in the production of cloth. In other words, it can produce cloth with fewer hours of labor. That you don't need to explain it, but you need to know which is which. Now, they also have the same situation with the wine. England has the absolute advantage in the production of wine, and again, it can produce wine with fewer hours of labor. Now, what about the comparative advantage, though? If you want to, you can take a step back and calculate the opportunity costs. So in other words, for England, the opportunity cost of cloth. Now, when we say the opportunity cost of cloth, we mean the sacrificed wine over the gained cloth. So if we make a yard of cloth, making a yard of cloth requires 1 hour of labor, which means giving up 1/3 of a gallon of wine. Okay, so if you make cloth, you're not giving up a whole lot of wine. Whereas wine is the other way around. The opportunity cost of wine is the sacrificed cloth or the gained wine, which is just equal to the inverse. All right. So just remember, when you figured out the opportunity cost for one product, for the same country, the opportunity cost of the other product is the inverse. And here's why. Because to make a gallon of wine, I need to use up 3 hours of labor, which could have been used to make 3 yards of cloth. Okay, well, if that's the case, what about Portugal? The opportunity cost of cloth is again the sacrificed wine over the gained cloth. So making a yard of cloth requires, in Portugal, 3 hours of labor, which could have been used to produce, now, not a full gallon of wine, but 3/4 of a gallon of wine. And then, of course, Portugal's opportunity cost of wine must be the inverse of that, which, in other words, the sacrificed, right, sacrificed cloth or the gained wine equals 4/3. Okay, in other words, when they make the wine, they're taking up 4 hours that could have been used to produce 4/3 of a yard of cloth. Okay, so, all right, let me just put together a quick little chart here. Okay, so just it's so much easier to see it all side by side. So instead here that England's opportunity cost of cloth is 1/3 of a gallon of wine, and their wine opportunity cost is 3. For Portugal, the opportunity cost of the cloth was 3/4 of a gallon of wine, and here we have 4/3. Now, what this says is this: England's opportunity cost in the production of cloth is lower than in Portugal, while its opportunity cost in the production of wine is higher than in Portugal. That's the bottom line. So who has the comparative advantage in the wine? That makes it Portugal. Its opportunity cost of making wine is lower than for England. And therefore, which country must have the comparative advantage in the cloth? Oh, I just realized that I missed something up here. Here it is. England has the comparative advantage in the production of cloth because it has the lower opportunity cost. All right, 1/3 versus 3/4. So England has the comparative advantage in the cloth, which in this case means that Portugal has a comparative advantage in the wine. Therefore, with all that being said, who should specialize in the cloth? That would be England. Of course. And who should specialize in the production of wine? That would be Portugal. And finally, when all the dust settles, what will happen to the output of wine and cloth if the two countries specialize in the good in which they have a comparative advantage? The total output, as we've already seen, of both wine and cloth will increase. And that's why we have trade, because that's exactly what we expect to happen. Each country will focus on what they're good at and let the other take care of the other product. And as a result, altogether in the entire world, total output goes up. And that's why we love comparative advantage so much, because it enables us to do this. Well, now that was pretty exhausting. So let's see. What else did I have planned for today? I just want to check something out real fast. Oh, I see. Remember we were doing the series, the Game of Theories, we had already the monetarists and the Keynesians and all that. I'll tell you what, we don't have that much time left, but let's just take a peek at the Austrians and then we'll call it a day. How about that? All right. This one is only about 4 minutes long. We want to be introduced to the Austrians, who have a very different way of looking at this stuff than the other two. All right, so let's take a look at the Austrians. All right, hold on. And let's check it out.
What time are you putting the midterm up?
What?
What time are you putting the midterm up?
Oh, not yet.
Okay, will it be today, I mean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are we done watching it?
Yes.
All right, I'll tell you what. So here's what we'll do. We'll stop right here. Now, I haven't quite finished with the midterm. It's not there yet, but I'll probably have it ready by later on tonight. So I'll post it up. Today's Thursday, isn't it? Yeah. So I'll give you at least a week to get it done, although it's not going to take anywhere near that long. This way you don't feel pressured to get it done by a certain time. But so I'll have it ready like very soon. And then you can start working on it. And in the meantime, when we come back next Monday, what we will do is we'll wrap up what we've been doing, and then we'll start the next chapter. All right. So I hope to have it completely done by later on tonight. If not, certainly by the first thing tomorrow morning. All right. In the meantime, I guess we're done.
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. You're welcome.